The Wellbeing Show. Got Laura and Barry with us, the dynamic duo. I'll be chatting to them in just a minute. If we're lucky, they'll show us some of their TikTok videos of playing famous characters. So we shall see. But anyway, it's live and direct from Hackney in London, and I just want to say this. It's going to embarrass him, but he's off camera. But so I want to congratulate James, who's the techie for my show, on getting a job with Times Radio. Well done, James. I'm really made up for you, mate. That's a really big step forward in his career, and hopefully we've been a small part of that, getting him on that ladder. I hope I don't lose you at some point when you become. Don't forget us when you're famous, James. That's the saying, isn't it? So congratulations to James, and it's really good news. It's a live podcast. It'd be lovely to hear from you. So welcome to join in. Either drop messages into one of the channels that we're streaming on, which currently I think is the YouTube channel and Facebook Live. Be lovely to hear from you, or send me a WhatsApp, +44 7506 319 745. That's about it from me. So enough to my guests. Rock steady, healthy, rock and roll healthy. What are you?
Solid health.
Rock solid health. I got it all wrong.
Don't worry, we've been called a lot worse than that.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure, given your backgrounds as well, I'm sure. Yeah. Very fruity language aimed at you at various points in life, which we're going to get into. You're a partnership in all the senses, married couple who met while in public service, moved out to public service and now into health and well-being. So tell us about the company at the moment, and then I'll rewind and go back in time, and your personal and professional history. So tell us about your company.
So yeah, Rock Solid Health. We're based down in Folkestone in Kent, but we're actually global. We have a lot more clients online than we do in person. And, you know, it's our aim to help people live happy, healthy lives. Yeah. And our passion is to be able to help people integrate healthy habits into a busy lifestyle. And we do that through our Super 6 pillars of health and well-being, but we also help business owners and professionals deal with burnout and manage their energy so they can live a life rather than exist it.
And which is a good place, I think, at which we're going to start rewinding the tape, because unlike many sort of health and coaching folks who may have gone to college and trained as personal trainers and, you know, sort of had a semi-professional career in sort of whatever it was, sport. That wasn't the story of either of you. Actually, you come from not that background at all, and actually quite a stress-ridden professional background in many ways. So you, Laura, were a police officer for a long time, and Barry, you were in the prison estate as a prison officer.
Well, Barry does have a long-standing relationship with fitness, however.
Right.
Yeah, my whole career is basically health, fitness, sport, and everything like that. But during my time as a personal trainer, fitness instructor, clinical sports therapist, I sort of fell out of love with it, met Loz, wanted to get a house. The money wasn't too great in the industry back then. So that's when I joined the prison service to earn a little bit more money and have a little bit of a career going on with that.
Yeah, and I guess the reason why I'm interested in that aspect to start off with is because I have a background in forensic work as a psychotherapist, so that was my first 15 years. So I met a lot of you folk dealing with offender patients and looking at MAPA, multi-agency public protection stuff, which you know about, and all that sort of stuff, and how to keep the public safe, and doing those mind-numbingly boring but necessary risk assessments. Just even I want to go and do harm to myself, sort of. But they have to be when the public are at risk. They have to cover every single eventuality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, putting the public first and public safety is always a priority in these services. So people should know we've got bloody good services, to be honest. In my humble opinion, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the job that you did will keep people off the streets, so it actually protects people from, you know, being hurt. You know, more people being hurt, and you know, I think the police and the prison do a good job with the, you know, resources that they have available to them.
Yeah, and we can talk a bit more about that, but I guess I'm as much as you can, because sort of there are elements of both your jobs which are covered by the Official Secrets Act, for example. I know I used to be a civil servant myself, so that's you sign that strange piece of paper saying sort of whatever it is that we promised to do, and I think it's high treason or high dungeon. I'm not quite sure when we open our gobs, but I guess I'm interested in the experience of working in a highly pressurized environment, the impact that has on your cells as individuals, the culture it creates. And there's all sorts of conversations going on about the culture in the police at the moment, for example. And we can talk a little bit about that and see. But also then the impact it has on your own health and well-being, and then the journey into this phase of your life where health and well-being has become centre. So I guess what I'm saying is, for people listening, that unlike a couple of teenagers who might not know what they're doing and talking about, you've got some real world experience of working in really challenging, stressful, difficult environments. And so I think that adds weight, if you like, to the message that you've got and what you offer, because it's based upon pretty unhealthy environments.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I was 10 years in the police service.
Yeah.
And you know, I did the normal, you know, join up, go on section, you know, 999 calls. 1 minute you might be at domestic violence, then you'll be at a
exactly.
death, and you never know what you're going to be doing from moment to moment.
Yeah.
And then I finished up my time in counter-terrorism intelligence. So what you're saying about signing stuff, you know, it's still, you can't talk about it. But
it's a definite lose-lose job, isn't it? It's sort of like people never see the prevention stuff, which is mostly what your job is in that sort of environment, because nothing happens, and that's great. But people don't see it. They only see the stuff that does happen, and then fingers get pointed, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
but yeah, it's it has a lot of pressures, because you never know what you're going to be walking into from day to day. Plus, you've got shift work as well, and you're exposing yourself to a lot of things that the average person will not see. So you're dealing with all of that stuff as well.
Absolutely. And experiencing and witnessing not just high fear for yourself, because although I think the majority of people are decent towards the police and understand and supportive, but there are obviously some people who don't like you.
I think people are decent to the police and the prison officers until you say that word no.
Yes.
when you say that word no, then it all changes.
Like a small child.
Can I leave? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So let's come to the prison service as well, because I've been in prisons. I've done work in prisons, and you, as a visitor, as a visiting professional, you're always given the health and safety conversation. You know, it doesn't matter how nice somebody is to you, you don't go to their cell, you don't go alone, and all that sort of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And actually, there was one prison in which I ignored those rules, which is Grendon. I'm sure you've heard of Grendon. It's an unusual therapeutic prison where it's the only one I sort of actually did feel safe in, to be honest. But all the others, I took that advice to heart. As a person working in the prison estate, though, what was that like? I mean, we sort of, I imagine it's quite a challenging and difficult, frightening job at times.
It can be a very challenging job, but I think when you go into the prison service, after a while, once you've got over the fear that there are prisoners in there, they're angry, they're aggressive, but there's that type of people out on the streets as well. But when I went in there with the attitude of I treated them like a human being, and I treat them the way I wanted to be treated. And I got a little bit of respect from the prisoners for that. I didn't go in there saying I am better than you. I went in there with a job, and if no was no, then I would say no. But if I could if I could help them out and answer the questions and do the stuff, I would say yeah, and I would make sure I would do it. The worst thing you can do in there is lie, because you're seeing right through, and then your credibility goes right down.
Yeah, it's also, I think, and this is the side of it that I don't think people see very often, because of course I was going in as a mental health professional most of the time, and that's in mainstream prisons, and the level of psychological distress that exists from both sides, I think, both in the prison population but also in the staff, is really not understood. And that I would say, I don't know what you think about this, but as a straw poll, finger in the wind type thing, 90% plus maybe of the people in there, I'm not talking about staff here, I'm talking about people who are sent to prison, 90+% have some sort of significant psychological distress, and have genuinely difficult stories as well. A
lot of them have, it's the upbringing they've had is always trouble around their upbringing, or they've later on in life they've been brought into the wrong crowds and they've tried to fit in, and then they get doing jobs for people, and then that's where it starts going, oh, it might be money issues. The easy way to get money is to sell drugs or whatever it is, violent crime. That's where a lot of the problems arise in there.
And so you have quite a highly traumatized population that you're dealing with, and sort of who, with any high levels of trauma, what you get is a reduction in empathy and all that sort of stuff. So it can be difficult to be around that, and hearing the stories would be, again, I think very challenging. And again, people should understand that as professionals who've done this work, we hear this stuff. We don't let our guard down and put anybody at risk. But at the same time, you form relationships with human beings over time, and that happens, right?
Yeah, you do. And I finished my the last 7 years with the prison service. I was a PTI, so I was in the gym side of it. I was an educator in there, teach them to become personal trainers, fitness instructors, sports therapists. So hopefully they'd go out and get educated and they get jobs outside. But when you're in that close environment, teaching and educating, you become quite close to them and you start to understand them, and you create I wouldn't say friendship, but you get a closer bond than you do with just the general public you don't see in there.
More of an acquaintance.
Yeah, more of an acquaintance. Yeah. And you can understand why some of them went to crime, because they had no other option than to go to crime. Otherwise, they'd be on the streets.
And again, this is not an excuse that anybody's making, but it's understanding the type of environment. And my argument always was, as therapists, it's not about excusing people, but if we want to reduce somebody's risk to others, making them more pro-social makes sense. And that means forming decent human relationships with somebody, because that's how our frontal lobes develop. They don't develop through having the shit kicked out of us. That's why we end up in prison, because that's what happened to us, right?
I think that's why, because that's the way they know how to deal with problems, is through violence, through aggression. That's how they don't know how to communicate with people and have a discussion when something arises. They don't know how to work through these problems without throwing a fist of violence.
Yeah, and there's also, I think, there's often quite a distinction. I mean, the female prison population is much smaller than the male prison population, and women are often put in prisons for different types of crimes. It's a sort of, there's a really strange gender differentiation that goes on. You know, women are often ending up in prison because stealing food to feed their kid. It's that sort of stuff, you know.
Yet again, I've worked in a female estate as well, and yet again, that can be just as volatile as a man's estate. So it all depends on what the problem is. There is always that volatility, and I think that is the most stressful thing about being in the prison service, is the level of uncertainty when you walk through them gates, open a prison cell, open the door, go on the wing. You never know what you're going to get, and I think that is where the stress levels are built up from with the staff members, is that level of uncertainty.
Yeah, and that's a sort of, you echo that as well in your field, don't you, Laura? That the uncertainty of what you're going to be dealing with, and also I guess that sense in which you needed the backup of your tribe, you know, the people that you were working with, or where you would go back to sort of decompress. But also there were the people that would back you up. You would want them to back you up if you were at risk, for example.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, when you go out on section, you're either double crewed or single crewed.
Yeah.
So double crewed would generally go in the, you know, in the ERV, which is an emergency response vehicle, and then single crew will kind of, you know, do other bits. And you know, even if you are close to a flash call, you still go if you're single crewed, and something could be kicking off, but you know that you've got your section to back you up. And if as soon as somebody pushes that red button, that's it, everybody drops everything and you are there. You know, and I have always been so fortunate to be around such a supportive, you know, sort of crew. Even if it's not my section, it's other people's section. Even now I'm friends with, you know, officers, and I still consider the police to be part of my family. So I really do, because they've given me so much.
It's interesting. It's an interesting, unique bond. My relationship to it was, I remember when I was working in locked wards, and you would always do this training together, safety training around what would happen if, and you carry personal alarms and things like that. And some of the hospitals had these illuminated arrows which would point to where.
Yeah.
Have you been in those environments? Me being me, I wanted to pull the alarm just to see what would happen. But
the amount of people would come in as a visitor and they would think the big green button was a light switch, and they'd push it, and then you got like 50 hairy ass screws coming flying through the door.
I once did accidentally pull a personal alarm when I was working with a patient in a room. It was completely accidental. In fact, we were playing, and it got pulled back, and all my colleagues came thundering down. And I was like going, "No, it's fine." But of course, they thought it was like, "Is he drowning? Is he waving? What is it?" And all of that. But I remember those times, and I still remember those people. The intensity of those relationships were real, and their sort of bonding was unlike anything else I've experienced in any other role, because potentially people would be saving your life at some point, and that was the truth and the reality of it.
And that I love that, because when we'd have an incident within the prison service and we had to restrain a prisoner for whatever the reason was, the three of us that was restraining the prisoner, there was a bond there, and you knew every time you walked past them days or weeks afterwards, you'd have a little nod, you'd have a little wink, you'd catch each other's eye, and there was this connection because we've been through this thing together, and it really cements this bond, this friendship, this brother in arms scenario.
But it also has the potential, I guess, and so we're maybe moving into some of the other issues that we're going to discuss, but it also has that potential to, if you're on alert in that way, to begin to erode some of your sort of psychological defenses and create problems. You're nodding away there, Laura. Do you want to jump in there and tell us something about it?
It was, I joined the police in 2003.
Yeah.
And it was in 2005, I think it was, that I was diagnosed with bipolar and OCD.
Yeah.
And you know, did the police cause the bipolar, or did I have it before? Who knows? We'll never know. But what I did know was that through being exposed to sleep deprivation, through night shifts,
work and all that sort of stuff,
working, and massive amounts of adrenaline, I started to become very unwell, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I would have horrific nightmares, panic attacks. I would feel very depressed. I would feel very low. I would just cry. I remember putting my stab vest on and just standing and just bursting into tears. I was like, I don't know why this is happening. I've always considered myself happy-go-lucky. And it was my sergeant that pulled me in the office, and he said, "There's something wrong. You have to go to the doctors." And I was like, "There's nothing wrong with me. I'll be fine. It's just my period." Do you know what I mean? It's nothing.
Been going 6 months, but it's just my period.
Exactly. It's like, no, it's fine. He's like, "No, I want you to go to the doctors." And I booked an appointment. I went to the doctors the next day, and I told them, I sat down. I said, "Look, I don't think you're going to be able to help me. My sergeant sent me here. This is what's going on." And he said these 3 words to me that changed the course of my life. And he said, you are depressed. He said, I'm signing you off work and I'm giving you this medication, and that's you for the time being. And I was like, what? And I remember ringing Barry coming out, and I'm like, babe, I can't believe that this has just happened to me, you know? And we did go through a period of saying, pull yourself together, because we didn't understand it, didn't really understand it. And then I would get better, and then I would get really happy and really animated
And spend all our money.
Spend lots of money and be very loud. And, you know, like I could do everything kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I would have a depression again. And then I would self-harm. And then I would think about, I don't think it's a good idea that I'm here anymore, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then through that, it was 2005, I saw the doctor. I was referred to the mental health team. And then in February 2009, I had 3 more words given to me by my mental health practitioner, which is my psychiatrist. You have bipolar.
Right. Yeah.
And that was it. That was the day that my fate was almost sealed, I think, within the force. Because I joined Noel, I wanted to be a firearms officer. You know, when I had my first depression, you're not having a gun.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And you know, it got to the point where I literally could not do the job anymore. And you know, it was 2013 in the June, and I went to see the force medical doctor, and he went, right, I think now is the time. You either do it or we do it. We retire you. And I said to him, I'm taking this. I'll make the decision. I am going to make a decision. He went, right, okay, that's it then. Off you go home. And I was like, yeah, but I've got case. No, he goes, you're not stepping foot back in the police station. That's it. And it took then until, it was September 2013. It took him all the way round till June 2013 for me to be medically retired. So I was at home on my own, you know, almost like lockdown, like you know, everything that you guys face. So that in a nutshell has been my journey, you know, sort of through my time in the police.
Which is, I mean, you're saying it in a very calm manner, but I can't imagine it was that straightforward for you emotionally, to be honest.
And even now, I will admit, talking about it, there is part of me that's like, oh, you know, I am gutted it happened.
Yeah, it must have been heartbreaking.
I loved being in the police. I loved doing what I did. You know, the day my warrant card was taken off of me was a sad day for me. Do you know what I mean? There's that element of I failed, I've let the team down, you know, all this kind of stuff.
You can, on reflection, know why it happened. It was to protect you, but also it was to protect the public as well, because you have access to power and resources that members of the public don't, and that needs to be in safe hands.
If this never happened to Loz, we would never be where we are now. We wouldn't be able to help all the people who are helping.
We're coming to that. I understand the transformation, because that's the way you are as people. And I think that story of I'm always fascinated by those stories of transformation. And what is it about somebody that they decide to transform a difficult experience into something that gives them insight and growth, and what doesn't? And I think there's always thinking about reasons. But I also want to come back to, because in some ways, Laura, you've got the dramatic bit of the story. The other bit of the story, though, is Barry somewhere in the background. And here's this woman that you, I presume, love. I think you do. That's why you got married.
100%.
And she's going, right, exactly. And she's going through this stuff. I mean, what on earth was it like for you?
It was like a roller coaster, really, because I'd go to work one morning thinking I've left Loz at home one way, and I'd come home and I would never know what I was coming back through the door. I've got no money left in our bank account because she's gone and bought the IMAX, or she's standing at the top of the stairs waiting to chuck herself down them. So it was like, whoa. And people at work used to, Baz, your wife's on the phone again. Baz, your wife's on the phone again. But she would always phone to check in with me like 2 or 3 times a day when I was on a long shift, just so she could hear my voice, And we say, yeah, everything's right. And then that would settle her down again. But the guys at work didn't understand at all. They used to.
You understand? Did you know what was going on? Were you getting information and support yourself?
No, not really. The doctors were fairly good. They would talk to me rather than talking to Loz, because Loz is very intelligent, and she would wrap them around the fingers and tell them what they wanted to hear, not what they needed to hear. So the doctors would always talk to me. I would go to, and I have been to every single appointment since we've been together. I've never missed a single appointment, whether it's doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, professors. I've been to everything.
Right.
So I always say that we've got bipolar.
Yes, I agree with you. And what do you mean by that? And then I'm going to say what I mean by it clinically.
Because we're a relationship, we are a partnership, we are a team. So if Loz is dealing with something, then we both deal with it, because I have to deal with the ups, I have to deal with the lows, I have to deal with those horrible mixed bipolar moments.
Yeah.
So it is a teamwork. And I think if we say we've got bipolar, it's so much easier to manage.
Yeah.
If I say, Loz, pull yourself together, it's your condition.
Well, thinking about it, because I think there's a lot of people that may go into relationships, or it evolves in the relationship, and they don't understand that it's going to have just as much of an impact on the person who's not identified as the patient as it is on the identified patient. I mean, without doubt, those are the tedious terms I use, because I work very much systemically with people, and I know that with long-term conditions, which is what you have, Laura, that it has an impact on the people around you. And that's often, if that isn't supported and processed, it sounds like the mental health services around you have been fantastic at opening up to you as a couple and as a family, if you like. Often that's not the case, though. Often the identified patient is treated as confidentiality, adults, we only deal with you, we deal with that person. They don't open up. So it's like you've had quite enlightened mental health practitioners, to be honest.
I think it's because we created that environment when we walked out the door, because they would say, oh, I need to speak to Laura. I said, no, you speak to both of us. Yeah. And I need to be with everything that's going on, because I need to know what I'm coming home to. I need to know what we're dealing with. And I think you set these boundaries when you have these appointments with these professionals. Yeah. So it is, when you deal with these professionals, it's a two-way thing. It's not.
I agree. I mean, I coach families into it. Yeah. Laura, you wanted to jump in there.
I've seen an evolution in the way that they treat me and Barry, though. So at the very beginning, it was very inclusive. I have my own mental health caseworker. But as the years have gone on, probably in the last maybe 5 years, they have said, are you sure you want him involved? Because I can see that there's more of awareness around, domestic violence in terms of, emotional and mental. And they have always, a couple of times, they've said, we'd rather see you just you.
Yes, I think that's right. They do like to do that.
Evolution come about with that recently.
I think that's true, and particularly with the new legislation around angry and controlling behaviour and all that sort of stuff. And you've got to really, I think, do those risk assessments as a mental health practitioner. And I always do as well, when we have to do that. But it's interesting, and I think just thinking about the implications, because I always talk to people and say, you understand this is, let's use the word family to be inclusive of your unit as well, if that's okay. It's a family illness. It's not an individual illness. It's a family thing, and it has to be treated at that level. And it's really interesting, I think. And for me, it's interesting because, again, I come from a social services background, so I'm interested in the legislation as well. But the Mental Health Act, for example, which I think is dreadful, we need to get rid of it. It's sort of medieval at best, but it's only, I think it was this year that it was adapted so that legally families can be included in care planning. I think it was only this year. Up till this year or the year before, up until that point, there was no legal duty whatsoever to include what the patient would identify as family and friends.
I mean, I was really lucky, because as soon as I was diagnosed, they sent me on a 32-week course at our local mental health centre.
Really?
Yeah, and I was sent there to learn about bipolar. I was sent to learn about my own triggers.
So they had a recovery college approach where they educated you.
Yeah, it was really good, and it really helped us. And like even my parents, of course, they're going to question, did we do something wrong? Is there something that we didn't do right? That kind of stuff. And they've got to deal with
I hope you teased them and told them it was all their fault.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's always the parents.
And here's the bill for my holiday, Mum. But if you don't mind, I mean, I don't want to go into areas that we shouldn't be going into, but again, because it's a family thing, inevitably, I think mum and dad, particularly of the identified patient, yourself in this case, would be asking those questions. I mean, it's sort of, how did you manage that and deal with it? Because I think it's fascinating that people buy into this medical model of mental illness, the idea that somebody is ill and we'll treat that person, and they sort of exist in isolation from everything else. And of course, that's never true. It's absolutely, there are rare occasions where people are absolutely on their own, but in most cases, it's having impacts on broader people. And did you, like when you went to this recovery college did they talk about that stuff? Did they give you tools and resources and information on how did you talk to mum and dad about it? How did you get them involved in all that?
Yeah, so I mean, they were very good in that they were like, ask about your past history with your parents, because sometimes these things can be hereditary, so, and the thing is, I'm very good communicating with my mum and dad anyway. I'm a good communicator. I mean, you're not in the police because you're not a good communicator. And it was just, for me, it was just about having open, honest conversations and saying to them, I'm not blaming you. I've got a dodgy gene from you and a dodgy gene from you. It was very much, this is what it is. And I talked to them about the course. I asked them, can you tell me what you've noticed in me? Can you tell me what you notice maybe when I call up and I'm in a mania or I'm in a mixed or a low? And I asked them, what do they see? So
I'm a resource for you.
Yeah, and we've got them involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really wise and sensible. I mean, I love chatting to you guys about this because you can consistently have the appropriate and correct support and you've made the right decisions. It's almost like you're a poster couple for how do you manage. No, seriously, because I do this. I train people in how to do this stuff. And this sort of approach, which is be realistic, and it's long term. You have to learn about stuff. You can't assume this. Just on the genetic thing, I mean, it's sort of for the next conversation with mum and dad, it's all epigenetic anyway. So it's environment. So there may be genetic latency, but it's only a latency and it needs an environmental trigger, which probably was the job, to be honest. But that's not the fault of the job. It's just
my OCD actually originates from when I was 4 years old.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I had whooping cough. And so I know that's been there, but then obviously, the bipolar and stuff.
It's about the role of stress in our lives, and people don't understand the impact, and we're going to go on to that, I know, because you work a lot with that, but people don't genuinely understand the impact of stress about switching on these epigenetic trigger. I think of it like, the way I explain it to people is a bit like this. I have dimmer light switches, and you have to push them on first, and then you have a controller on them. And that's what epigenetics is. You need that finger to turn it on, and then you need the fingers to turn it up. Once it's turned up, you can't turn it down and that's what epigenetics is. That's what environment is. That's what managing mental health problems successfully is. It's stop turning it up, leave it alone, and then let's manage it like that. And the evidence of this is in these identical twin studies. And one of the classic types of studies that are done is thinking about psychotic illnesses, which is schizophrenia and so on and so forth. Which we know has an inheritability. And of course, identical twins have the same genes. And the studies have shown that if one identical twin develops a psychotic illness, you would expect automatically the other identical twin to do it. But there's only 50-50 chance they will.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? And that's what these identical twin studies are very interesting in looking at. And the determinant factor seems to be the capacity of the other person to have stress management skills.
Yeah.
And the more effective those stress management skills are, the less risk of that gene being turned on.
I suppose they if there's a trigger in the room and one person gets triggered and the other, they've seen that same incident from two different points of view, so they're both going to be affected in two different ways. So yeah,
it's that complex interplay between what we're born with, capacities and skills, and then what happens to us in life, and so it's sort of random with these things, is what I'm saying, and people need to understand that. It's interesting when you look at trans-species mental health issues. So things like addiction, for example. A lot of people say, oh, it's my fault, my kid's got addiction. I go, well, bees are alcoholic and monkeys are, and horses are addicts. Were they brought up by human parents? I don't think so. We don't know enough about this stuff to be able to say why it happens. But we do know a certain amount of things. Yeah. And what the things that we do know are the things that you are explaining to us. This is the successful way to manage these conditions. You have an employer that spots it, you have an employer that's realistic with you, isn't afraid of having the hard conversations and says, no, you can't do this, but we're going to get you out with a nice package, I hope. They gave you a reasonable package when you just dumped you. You have a good, strong partnership. You're open, you get involved in the services, you get trained and educated about your own conditions, so you become the expert, and you can then educate and train other people in the wider family. Yeah. Success, right? You don't get cured of bipolar once you've got it. The switch is on, that's it. But you can manage it so that you don't do dumb stuff and turn it up high again. What about, I'm interested from your perspective, Barry. You both sound a bit like me, that you come from probably working class backgrounds as opposed to, and I certainly know from my own working class background, I'm off to see my family this weekend to go to a christening. We didn't have the best education in terms of stigma around mental health, for example. There were all sorts of odd ideas. It's better now, and I'm like, if my family are listening, I know you're educated about this stuff because you've had to listen to me drone on about it for decades. So don't shoot me at the christening, please. But there is a lot of ignorance, and there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of issues around this sort of stuff. And I wonder, I'd like to hear from Barry on this one, because I'm guessing people would have given it to you rather than to Laura, because they might go a clip around the ear if they were sort of unpleasant to Laura, but they might have sort of risked dumping some of that stuff on you. Did you experience some of that stigma and that sort of miseducation?
It was more about, is she really that? Can't she just pull herself together? That kind of talk. But I was in that boat when we first got diagnosed. I was in the boat. Come on, let's just pull yourself together. Come on, let's just do this and do that. It can't be that bad. But the more we got involved, the more appointments we went to, the more interested I got into mental health and how the brain works and the mind works. It's not like that at all. But I think the most important thing is responsibility.
Yeah.
As soon as Loz took responsibility and we start talking about it, and Loz started owning the condition, and I worked with her, people changed their tune because Loz was confident about talking about it. Right. And I think when we're not confident in talking about these conditions, that's when we get this underlying weave of communication underneath people's voices.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to stop.
I totally agree. Again, I love the fact, Barry, that you say when we got bipolar. People may not have heard that, but I heard it, and that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful way of describing it. That's what makes management of the condition successful. Laura, do you mind if I ask you can tell me to bog off? I mean, I have it's an unfortunate part of me that I ask personal intrusive questions. It comes with the job, but you're not my patient, so you don't have to answer these questions. Even my patients don't have to answer them. What are your thoughts? I presume you take medication for your condition or not, I don't know. What's your views on medication? Because it can be quite a tricky subject.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a kind of severe psychiatric condition. If you need to take medication and you find that you get benefit from taking medication, then you should take that medication, right? However, I do believe that that's just one point of the triangle.
Sure.
You cannot just rely on the medication. I was taking lithium for a while, and I had a really bad depression where I didn't drink or eat, and the toxicity went up and my kidneys went bang. So I went into stage 3 kidney disease with that. So then I moved over now to, I'm on lamotrigine and I'm on quetiapine. And
so atypical antipsychotics for those that don't know.
So I take
really successful for people.
Every day. And I mean, there are times when I go into a mania and I'm like, I don't need my meds, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me. And then, you know, Barry,
off this bridge,
and I'll be acting up for a few days and Barry will be like, you're taking your meds, and I'm like, but you know, and so I've had full-blown arguments with doctors. Look, I don't need these meds, and they're like, well, let me just ask you this. When you take them, do you feel better? Can you and I'm like, yes. And they're like, so just keep taking them then. And I understand, you know, where they're coming from. And that comes down to that responsibility bit. You know, we nearly lost the business because I had a massive burnout and a bipolar episode. And it's because I was irresponsible. And the bipolar doesn't just affect me, as Barry said. It's him, it's my mum and dad, it's my friends, it's my family, it's my cats, and it's my clients. And I have a responsibility to take my medication and to look after myself.
I think that's a clear message, and I would echo it as well. Really, I mean, I sort of there's a lot of interesting conversations about the role of psychotropic medications or not, and whether they're helpful or not. I think particularly there's some issues for women at times in terms of weight gain and things like that, which are difficult with these, particularly these quite significant sort of antipsychotics. Lithium is another one that will do that. Lithium, I have to say, although it didn't work for you, it still is the gold standard.
Brilliant.
It's an amazing medication. It's as old as the trees or the hills. You know, it's ancient. Sort of one of the first generation of sort of psychotropic meds, but it's massively successful.
Yeah, it was really good for me. I did develop tremors with it, but it was purely that it just became too toxic in my body that I just wasn't even able
It's the big problem with lithium, because it's only therapeutic in a very specific level in your bloodstream.
I remember having to have blood tests every single day. And it was almost like they couldn't find the veins.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? When it was so bad. So
to manage, which is why this shift into the atypical antipsychotics, I think, have been a big step forward, to be honest, for those that it works for, because you don't have to have that constant medical intervention monitoring your bloodstream, and you don't have to worry about losing your internal organs one day, which is a nice thing not to have to worry about, to be honest. So that's all of that is, you know, it's like, if I could describe a story on how do you deal with a significant mental illness, you've just described how you deal with it, which is fantastic. And I think really, really good to hear from you about clear recovery principles, which is, you know, accept reality, deal with it, do what you have to do, take responsibility, learn, include all the people that need to be included, learn the lessons, make mistakes, but don't beat yourself up about them, learn from them and move on. Yeah, that's exactly what I tried to teach people. You've just described it, so there you go. There came a point when you could no longer work in that high pressure job, which for your own protection and the protection of the public, and you were kicking your heels, and Barry, I guess you were still in the prison estate at that point. At some point you transition into this particular phase of your life. Do you mind, Barry, do you want to lead us on that story, how you got to this place?
I was still in the prison service, working a full-time job. And when Loz got medically retired from the police, we knew what exercise did, and we knew what nourishing our body did for us. And we knew how well doing those two things helped Loz with her bipolar. So we thought, we've got all this information now. What can we do? Because Loz was thinking, she's 33 years of age. She's never going to find another job, or no one's going to ever employ her.
At 33, really.
And literally overnight, we set
You're
up
into a depressed patch there.
yeah.
Well, 33, medically retired, mental health. Really?
Yeah, but you know, I see that as an opportunity for transformation. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We transformed. We found the opportunity. We knew how good what our knowledge was around this subject. So we set up Rock Solid. It was Rock Solid Body Transformations to start.
So is that the thing where you two connected in your relationship?
No, we first met each other when we was 3 and 4 years of age.
No, get out of here. You're not serious.
Loz has even got a tattoo on her arm of what I looked like when we first met. And we after we left there, we separated our separate ways, went through school, done everything like that. Then she walked into the gym I was working at.
When you was 20?
When I was 22. And we started dating. About 3 weeks into the day, we went on a drink and we started talking about where we went to school, where we went to play school. And then we said, where'd you go to preschool then? I said, I went to this place called the YMCA. I used to play The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man with this girl and this bloke who was my best friend, Luke. And she was like, no.
So did I.
I used to play The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man with this boy and this other boy. And she goes, I used to play Firestar. I was like, you are kidding me.
Brilliant.
You are kidding me. And it was, yeah.
So,
story.
Yeah, I was 21 and Barry was 22 when we met.
Right.
For the second time round.
For the second time round. And, you know, he joined the prison in 2004. 2004. Yeah, 2003 and 4, we were both joined the police and the prison service. So we'd known each other before we then went into all of that. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fated to be together. I mean, it's really interesting, that stuff, and I don't know how that happens, but it's fascinating when it does. And so you meet, you join, you have your careers. It's all mapped out, I presume, in your minds. Yeah. We're married. We've got these careers. And
both had fantastic careers. We were both on very good money. We were both on top whack in the services. I was a senior officer grade, so I was on 30 grand plus. Loz was on a similar wage. Happy days. Yeah. Big pensions at the end of it, and then Loz got retired and ruined it all. Only kidding.
Thanks,
but it opened up this world.
Once you get that tattoo of him, but we'll come back to that at the end of the show. Yeah. I'm not going to do that live on air.
I had this dilemma in my head. Loz set up Rock Solid when she got medically retired. So I was taking clients before I went to work and when I come home from the prison service. So I was working a lot of hours, and we got to a point where we had a full bank of clients, and I thought, do we run Rock Solid as like a hobby where Loz can do it and I can come in and just do it bits and pieces, or do I jump ship, sack off the prison service, and we go, right, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can make with Rock Solid. And I went in there one day, gave my boss my notice and said, I'm working my month off. And then we just
that's quite a leap of faith, Barry. That's quite a leap of faith. How did you feel about that, Laura? Were you anxious or excited or both? Or
yeah, I was anxious about it because, you know, mainly money. Like, we literally had just moved into this house. We'd taken on £250,000 mortgage, and I'd just been medically retired. You know, we were like, oh my God, what have we just done? But, you know, the job was getting very dangerous for Barry. You know, he was ending up being on a wing, you know, or having about 100 prisoners to him in the gym. Stuff was getting a lot worse.
Yeah, right.
We were just like, is it actually worth it? And, you know, we saw the potential of what Rock Solid could do. And we also followed our passion really more than anything on this one. Yeah. And just decided to take it. We spoke to friends about it. We spoke to family about it. You know, we went literally from 60K down to about 4K a year, you know. But we knew what we wanted to create in this world. We wanted to live more of a purposeful life, personally for us. You know, that's not dissing anyone that's in the prison service or anything like that, but we just wanted something different. We felt we had a calling with everything that we'd been through, that we could actually help people in this realm. Yeah.
And again, I think it's sensible psychology. It really is. It's not sensible. It doesn't seem sensible on the surface when you're going to give up security and things like that. But actually, if you're in a very split place in your life where you're doing something because you want safety, but it makes you feel unsafe doing it, then you're not going to get that feeling of safety. Whereas if you move into the more high risk, it seems on paper thing, but it's a place where you do feel at home, you do feel welcomed, you do feel like you are meaningful and purposeful, etc. I mean, it's really one of the few things that, you know, Mark's talked about that still makes sense, is that his understanding of our emotional needs in work, and that having a sense of connection to this productive activity is fundamental to health and well-being. And sort of he spotted that. I mean, his whole theories of alienation were about that idea of how work can become commodified and therefore we become alienated from it. And I think he's spot on with that stuff. I think we'd all agree with that, and that the move towards having a more purposeful and meaningful life, and particularly post-pandemic, I think those discussions are really, really important now. But you make that seemingly crazy decision. I've got huge amounts of debt. Why don't I get rid of all my money? That makes a lot of sense. Let's go for it. But I'm guessing through the fear, there was also, a sense of relief in some ways, that you've made the decision, you commit yourself to a course of action. Is that correct? It was those types of feelings as well as the anxiety, but it's like, okay, this is me, this is what I should be doing.
I think the biggest thing is we know that our relationship is rock solid. Our relationship is so strong. It doesn't matter what we went through or what we go through. We've got each other. And that's all that matters in life to me, really. That's all that matters. We've got each other, and that's it.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, that's fundamentally with social animals. And if we got our herd, no matter how small, we're going to be okay, I think.
I follow the saying, I'd rather regret I've tried something than regret I didn't try it.
Yeah.
So you have to jump ship. You have to burn those bridges to sail across the ocean and find new lands. And that's what we did when it come to open up Rock Solid. Well, I burned the bridges with the prison service and off I went.
But the interesting is, and from a psychological perspective, I think what you're talking about love and bonding is what I would call attachment. When we have good, safe attachment and we internalize that sense of being loved and worthwhile, we can take risks more.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, we know that. And you look at things like this thing called the stranger situation, which when we want to abuse children as psychologists, we do this thing to them called the stranger situation. We have a mum and a toddler together, and we get a stranger to walk in the room. The toddler will go, ooh, freak out, go sit on mum's lap very briefly, and then feel okay and loved and secure, and then go and start chatting to the stranger. And that's literally what the sense of being loved gives us, is the capacity to chat with a stranger, because that's what love should do, give us freedom, not chains. Gives us courage to explore. And so in one sense, what I'm hearing you say is that this phase of your life was born of that love for each other and the love and passion that you have for helping each other, others, to get healthy and wealthy, emotionally wealthy. Would that be appropriate to say?
Yeah, definitely. And we saw the potential, what could be, rather than kind of like not spending, we spend every day together now, Noel, like day in, day out, every day. No, I'm joking. It's amazing. We even sat today and we were like, how lucky are we? And we just saw the potential of what it could be and how we could be living our lives. And we were like, sod it, you're only here once.
Yes, I agree, totally. So we're coming towards the end of the hour, and I want to make sure we talk about Rock Solid and what you actually do and what you deliver and how people get hold of you. So tell us about the company and the services, because that's how I saw you. I saw you both at the sort of workplace conference. So what is it that you offer? What does Rock Solid do? We know why it does it and what's behind it and the ethos and the values and the experiences, and all of that is extraordinary stuff, to be honest. But what is it that you do? What do you offer to people?
So there's two kind of branches to what we look at, Noel. number one, we look at people's health, and predominantly people will come to us because they want to lose weight. But what we will help them to do is through one of our services, which is the Rock Solid Health Academy, we help them to understand the Super 6 pillars and integrate those so that they can start to live a healthy lifestyle, ditch that diet rubbish, all that kind of nonsense, and actually start to exist.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me about the Super 6 pillars.
So Super 6 pillars of health and well-being are sleep, hydration,
absolutely,
nutrition, movement, thought management, and de-stress me time. And guess what?
That's it.
They're all the things that I've used to look after my mental health. Everything from Rock Solid has been born from how we've looked after ourselves.
And that's literally what I teach people about managing mental health issues. And they go, what do you mean drink water? Hydrate, sleep, eat, exercise. We've all got them.
Absolutely.
Constantly drinking, constantly. And oxygen, breathing.
Yes, we do a lot of breath work with our guys. I'm a yoga breath coach, so we do a lot of breath work with them. And so that's kind of like the academy.
You say moving rather than exercise.
Yes, exactly.
That's a thoughtful choice of words. Why moving rather than exercise?
Well, we educate people that we got two different things. We got physical activity and we got exercise. The term exercise is have a specific outcome, whether you want to get faster, stronger, more powerful. But we talk about movement because a lot of people don't like to exercise. They don't like to go to the gym. They don't like to, all we're asking people to do is move their body. So we detoxify their body. Then we can start increasing health benefits through changing the way we move from detoxifying to health benefits. Once we start to learn to do that, then we can move on to the fitness side of things, and we can start being more specific outcomes.
Absolutely. And that notion of having a more active lifestyle is at the core of the NHS plan around reducing obesity and the problems that comes with it, for example.
It's phenomenal, the results that we get from people who have got no diet plans, no grueling exercise stuff. Literally, the first thing we go is, right, when do you go to bed and how much water do you drink? And sometimes, bam, that just sorts it all out. Right?
Yes. Tell me about the stress stuff, because again, I'm really fascinated by this because I think it's the one thing that people just don't get, how toxic stress is and how much we need to learn how to manage it. So what's your approach is? What does
when we talk about stress with our guys, we often give them breathing techniques, because we understand that so many of us are wired and tired. And when we are breathing, we are ancillary breathing and we're always in fight or flight. So we encourage our guys and we talk to them about stress management through breathing. You know, we've got the vagal nerve, which runs down through our body. And when we breathe through our diaphragm, it massages the left-hand side of that, which stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which puts us into that. But we also talk to people about, when was the last time you had a laugh, like a real big laugh? You know, what about your hobbies? What about doing some grounding work? What about doing some journaling? You know, actually taking time
to fill your cup up. And we talk about that a lot with our guys from Energized Leadership when we talk about burnout. How are you filling up your cup? Because often we're putting others before ourselves. We're getting bitter and resentful. We're not sleeping. We're not eating. Our body is full of cortisol. It's full of toxins. And do you know what I mean?
All of the words in the right order, as far as I'm concerned. And it's really interesting. Again, we think about doing fun stuff, because a good life is not just the absence of feeling shit. A good life is doing nice stuff that you enjoy. That's the whole point about it. And it's also now encoded in prescribing practice in the GP. You have these things called social prescribing, where rather than medication, the doctor will send you to group. And then that's happening more and more. So absolutely spot on with the evidence. And you work as well, given your background, with people who are high performing within corporations and organizations. Tell us something about that, because that's a unique group of people who are uniquely complicated to work with, in my experience.
So a lot of the time, we work with Wellity, global, and we work with other corporates who come to us independently, and we will go in and we will do talks, we will do workshops. One of the big ones that we are talking about is stress. The other ones we're talking about is how to get motivation, actually live a healthy lifestyle. And then the other one, which we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks, is about mindfulness. So we're teaching them the difference between meditation and mindfulness, and how to empty this, our head, in order to be able to be more productive. And it's always nice to work within that sector as well, because these people are highly driven, they are highly dedicated, and often we have to pull the reins in.
Yes.
A lot of the time we're there to pull the reins in, because they want to go. And it's like, well, hang on a second, let's just, slow is fast and fast is slow. So let's just slow things down a little bit. And it is always a pleasure to work with people who are highly motivated. But
as you both are as well. I mean, you're a good example of somebody with high motivation, but I guess most people don't understand that motivation is an emotion, and like all emotions, it comes and goes. And so you have to have systems and structures in place that manage that ebb and flow, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like every morning, most mornings I will wake up and I have negative Nelly in my head. Like literally, it's like a bully. But I have to do my mind medicine in the morning, where I meditate, I journal, I do my cards, I like all my crystals and stuff like that, and that is the one thing that will help set my mind up for the day on a positive step. So you have to work on these things.
And also I think the interesting thing about mindfulness and mindfulness meditation is it's so bloody easy. It's ridiculously easy, and it's ridiculous the benefit you get from something that is so easy. It's bonkers. It changes your DNA structure, it changes the ends of your DNA structure so that you're less likely to get cancer, and that's just from a breathing technique. I mean, that's
I know, but we've been brainwashed, haven't we, to think that it's got to be difficult.
Yeah, that's right. I think the great thing about mindfulness, my experience of it, is that you can drop it into your everyday life, and that's the great thing. So I do it before a meeting. I'm walking down the street to a meeting that might be stressful. I do some mindful walking, and I feel great by the time I get into the meeting, on top form. We are at the end of the show. What I want to do is make sure that people have your contact details so that they can reach out to you. Have you got a website?
We do. It's do we say www anymore? I don't really know. It's rocksolidhealth.co.uk.
You can go http://www. if you want.
Yeah, so we're there. We're on Instagram quite a fair bit at Rock Solid UK. And also Facebook, Rock Solid Healthy as well.
So James will put all those links on this show, and people can just reach out to you, have a chat about the types of services that you offer. I guess on your Facebook and Instagram, you're offering sort of little videos for people, and they can join you there and sort of stay up to. Just before you go, let's have a look at one of those little videos of you two as the superheroes, because they're hilarious. They are absolutely brilliant.
Yes, we'll do the TikTok one. Let's have a look at this one.
That's just incredible. There's no CGI there at all.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Show me something that you spent way too much money on, but don't regret it at all, because you'll make it sick.
That's fantastic stuff.
And our little transition. There you go.
Bring the action.
Well done. That's brilliant stuff. And it's a really good example of how much fun that you two have in what you do, and selling that message that healthy is fun is, I think, really, really important, because for some reason healthy has become really serious sort of depressing.
Oh, I know. And I don't think
that happened.
I know. I don't think it's helped with COVID as well, because we feel like we've had all of this on us. But yeah, let's just make it fun. Drop the numbers, embrace life, and just have some fun with it.
Really, really amazing to have you on. I'm sorry, I mean, people don't know, but I got ill, so we had to cancel the first time I was going to have you on. So it's lovely to sort of catch up. I've been really looking forward to this one. Ever since I saw you both at the conference, I was like, oh, yeah, those two know what they're doing, and sort of really grounded advice to people. So thanks very much. You stay there. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. I was talking to somebody the other day about this show, and it's the thing I enjoy the most every week, because the people that come on are extraordinary and absolutely. I was talking to last week's guest about it. We spent about half an hour afterwards having a chat, and it's just mind-blowingly awesome, the people that come on, the stories that people have. And so I leave this show feeling elated in a good way again. So fantastic story from both of you. Thank you. Really inspiring stuff. I'll catch up with you all next week. You two guys stay there, and I'm just going to say goodbye now. And also, just before I finish, congratulations again to James. So bye-bye, everyone.